Okay. Good morning, everyone. This is the Program Review Process Advisory Council meeting on August 18th. I hope you are all doing well. We were just joking about it's the start of the semester and everyone is in start of the semester mode, whether that's freshmen coming on board, returning students, or new faculty or faculty orientations and the like. So I hope all is going well in those transitions. The recording is capturing everybody's attendance, so I don't think that we need to do a roll call. Do we have any proxies? It would be helpful to know if there's anybody here who is attending on behalf of somebody else. I think we had a couple of people joining through proxy, maybe not. We'll give it a minute. I'm looking on my screen. I think we're good. Okay, Secretary Rai, do you just want to give a warm welcome?
Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining. As we were talking about commencement was just yesterday, and now we are ready to welcome new students. We are all excited about it. Thank you for what you do on your campuses to help the students. We really appreciate that. These are not the easiest times to support our students. Forever grateful for everything that you do on our campuses. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Secretary Rai. Okay, so today's meeting, we wanted to take a step back and provide you all just an overview of the whole process of program review, what the team does, and some statistics for you all to be situationally aware. What is forthcoming is some new draft standards around unreasonable duplication and unnecessary duplication. Before we get to those draft standards, which will be shared in a future meeting, either September or October, I wanted to give you information to kind of mull over in your brain in the coming weeks around our processes and why unreasonable duplication and unnecessary duplication matters and the context around our legislative history. This is an attempt to level set our understanding of Maryland's academic program review process. This is a process we use to evaluate new degrees and certificate programs that our colleges and universities in Maryland seek to offer. As you all very well know, the process begins with a formal submission from the college to MHEC. Institutions have to provide detailed information, including program objectives, the curriculum, specific coursework, need and demand for the program, both in terms of incoming students and the demand for graduates of the program, and evidence of alignment with the state plan for higher education. The proposal has to also demonstrate that you have the faculty, the facilities, and the resources to offer that program. So again, many of you are familiar with the proposal outline and what is required in that proposal. But those are the big themes that we ask for in the proposal. Once the proposal is submitted and we've deemed it complete, that all of the sections that we need information on have been completed, we post it to our website and we circulate it to a listserv for a 30-day review period. This is what we consider a public comment opportunity. So again, we post it to our website and we circulate it on a listserv. Most everybody here is on that listserv. If you're not, we're happy to add you to that list so you get those email updates regularly when we put a proposal out for circulation. During this time, during this 30-day period, other colleges and universities can submit comments or formal objections. This is one of the most important parts of the process because it helps ensure that our academic programs meet the state and regional workforce needs without causing unnecessary duplication or unreasonable duplication. So let me pause here to explain this duplication piece of things because it's an area that's been recently changed in light of legislation from 2024. House Bill 1244. So some of you have heard us talk about House Bill 1244. We are continuing to implement House Bill 1244, and in particular, these distinctions around unreasonable and unnecessary duplication. President Ginsburg, I see your hand.
Yeah, I wanted to right from the jump just raise an issue that I think would be wise to consider, Emily. The language that you're using itself to me is interesting. Unnecessary and unreasonable, which speaks to the negative. My theory, and my theory all along, as I think you know, is that there is reasonable and necessary duplication that's quite distinct from unnecessary and unreasonable. And I'm curious about why the emphasis on the negative as opposed to an emphasis on the positive. Because in my view, the positive actually outweighs the negative.
It's a great question. I don't know if I have an answer for you, quite frankly. It is historical language that dates us back to Brown versus Board of Ed, segregatory laws and policies, and into our modern era, particularly with the coalition settlement case. So there is history to that. I don't think I can eloquently describe all that history or do it justice, but just know that I think I want to say that there is history for those terms.
Well, my perspective is history should inform our perspective, but not determine our perspective. And so I wonder if there's any traction to a different kind of concept. Because to be frank with you, having come to Maryland a couple of years ago, I've been struck by the emphasis on the negative rather than the proactive and the positive. In other words, we oftentimes look back rather than forward. This is an opportunity, I think, with this task force to stop the backward perspective and to regain a traction for a forward perspective. And so I think perseveration of history and understanding of history is important, but a perseveration of history, I think, paralyzes us for the future. And so I wanted to raise this morning and ask you and the secretary and others on the call to consider about whether or not this concept of unnecessary and unreasonable is a concept that frankly is outdated, unnecessary, and paralyzing. And a different perspective, which we have an opportunity to provide, might be more useful, a useful approach and a more useful context to consider. So I'll be quiet now, but I wanted to put that on the table because I was really struck by the language you used, which positions us not as a forward-facing state, but really a state that looks not forward but backward.
Appreciate the commentary. Before I open it up for discussion, I just want to make one more clarifying point. It is the language that is in the law. So if we were to make some recommendations, we would likely be going to the General Assembly for alternative terminology, if not even going further around additional considerations. Let me open it up to the floor for others to respond to President Ginsburg's comments. Okay. Well, President Ginsburg, food for thought. We appreciate your comments, but this is why this group is meeting, is so that we can discuss these items.
I'm sorry, this is Roger.
Provost Ward, go for it.
I couldn't figure out how to raise my hand on my mobile. I support Mark's point of view on this to the extent we are assembled as a working group. I think everything should be on the table on this. We should be thinking how Maryland could distinguish itself in this area. And again, not be mindful, not suggesting, as Mark said, that we not be mindful of history, but I don't think we need to also be rigidly tethered to it if it's really not in the best interest of the state. And it turned out to be that the current language is the one we stick with, but I think it would be a miss or a lost opportunity if we didn't at least look at the language. And if it results in a recommendation to the legislature for the change of language, if we think the recommendation has merit, we should proceed with that.
Provost Ward, helpful feedback. Thank you. And that is exactly what this council is. It's an advisory council to help advise the commission. So if there are formal recommendations that this council wants to make, that is absolutely within the purview of the council. And we can entertain that in coming meetings. So somebody would need to likely propose or even conceptually identify what that recommendation would say. But we can certainly put that on a future agenda.
Well, Emily, it might be that once you put forward the draft that you all have been working on, that we could all take a look at it and think about one, and I certainly want to acknowledge and agree with you the importance of history and the importance of legislative intent. But the legislative intent is not to paralyze universities in the state. The legislative intent is to allow innovation and forward thinking about universities in the state. And if we think there's an alternative way to do that proactively, appropriately, and responsibly, then I think we have that opportunity. So I don't want to restrain the conversation because you started by saying you're going to be putting something forward for us to consider. And maybe that's the right time to consider, the context and the opportunities we have. I just wanted to put it on the table because I was so struck by the language as opposed to the opportunity.
Appreciate that and noted. Thank you. Okay, so as we just discussed in my notes, we talk about our history. Maryland has a long history with this issue. You might recall the 15-year lawsuit against the state for permitting duplication of programs at particularly our historically Black colleges and universities. That lawsuit was settled in 2021, and part of the settlement required an independent review of our program approval process. That resulted in what is called the NCHEMS report, and that followed, as well as a legislative work group, which led to the reforms that created House Bill 1244. And I'm happy to, if anybody wants any of those materials, happy to make sure you all have that background. A central theme in these reforms is workforce need. Maryland, as many other states, are facing shortages in lots of different critical areas. For Maryland, we talk about healthcare, education, broadly IT, whether we're talking about AI, cybersecurity, or other computer oriented fields, and of course, energy in lots of different ways. The revised process now requires institutions and the commission to draw on a common state verified labor market data resource to demonstrate demand for that program. This ensures that new programs are not just academically sound. We want to make sure that the curriculum is appropriate, but it's also connected directly to jobs and skills that Maryland needs, both in terms of what Marylanders need, as well as the Maryland economy. In other words, program approval is no longer only about what the institution can offer. It is also about whether the program will lead to real opportunities for students and strengthen Maryland's economy. So what we've done is we've created some of that baseline data in collaboration with Department of Labor and Department of Commerce. These are now considered appendices to the state plan of higher education and will be updated annually. The commission approves the first iteration of the workforce needs analysis in March, and we just recently hired a director of workforce needs. Her name is Karen King Sheridan, to help the agency and help your institutions navigate the plethora of data around what kind of need do we have for particular industries. So we have this analysis and we now have a dedicated staff member to navigate this work. So we are excited to be able to share that opportunity as your campuses think through new programs or even substantial modifications to existing. The second priority is, of course, collaboration between and among our colleges and universities. This collaboration is broadly understood in terms of resource sharing, broadly understood in terms of transfer and articulation, and broadly understood in the context of lifelong learning. That we know that when a student completes an associate's degree, they may not immediately move on to a bachelor's degree, but it's likely in their future at some point. And same thing with postgraduate work, whether that be a certificate, a master's degree, or even doctoral education. So thinking about that lifelong learning and how institutions can collaborate within Maryland to make sure that there is a pathway for students. In light of all of this, we have identified, the legislature has identified two different distinct conceptual understanding of duplication. The first is unnecessary duplication, which is unnecessary duplication that would be a violation of the state's equal education opportunity obligations under state and federal law. This applies when two programs are broadly similar, and we must determine if there is sound educational justification to allow both programs to exist. One example of a sound justification is meeting state and regional workforce need. If we find evidence, compelling evidence, that there is a sound educational justification for two programs to exist in the same field, broadly in the same field, then we would conclude that there is no unnecessary duplication, or President Ginsburg, that the duplication is necessary. The second consideration for duplication is unreasonable duplication. This is defined as duplication that would cause harm to the state or to the students either attending our institutions or Maryland students writ large. House Bill 1244 directs the commission to prioritize two things in this analysis. First, and very explicitly, first, meeting state and regional workforce need, and second, preserving existing programs that are already capable of meeting those needs. And again, to support this, we've now created some lists that identify in-demand occupations and the related academic programs that lead to those occupations. Now, we have another advisory council that is actually convening today that is specifically charged with identifying workforce shortages. And conceptually, one could argue that in demand is different from a shortage. Shortage implies that it is also in demand, but it is an immediate in demand. We need people today. Whereas in demand could be a longer or projected need for a particular occupation or growth of an industry. So, and this is something that we have just kind of started to understand, the distinction between a shortage and an in-demand occupation. So something, again, for you all to be thinking about around the needs of the state. Additionally, there is the consideration around emerging fields and occupations that don't even exist today. The best example that I can give is drone technology. 20 years ago, that didn't necessarily exist. And today it is a very real occupation, not just for flight operators, but as well as engineers and other industries that leverage drone technology for the purposes of expanding their portfolio. So again, we have an initial version of this workforce needs analysis. We have a different advisory council to help us identify workforce shortages. And we will continue this larger work with Department of Labor, Department of Commerce. We've had initial conversations with Department of Health and other statewide industry partners to help us better understand what is the need for Maryland so that we can provide that information to your campuses for the development of targeted academic programs. Okay, back to our process. So we put proposals out for circulation, 30-day circulation for both comments and objections. After that review period, and after considering any objections or comments, the secretary will make a decision to either approve or deny the proposal. In cases where there is an objection, we review the relevant materials, including the objection, written response from the proposing institution. We meet with both institutions. We have now created processes internally to meet with industry partners, licensing boards, and other outside entities to help inform our staff around a particular program and its related employment outcomes. And we do that work to make sure that the decision is based in evidence and has a sound justification for making that decision. I've focused most of my commentary just now on new academic program proposals. I do want to highlight that the team reviews lots of different other types of proposals. For example, articulation agreements, whether or not a proposal is moving into a different modality, such as moving a program into fully online. And then certainly we review proposals offered by out-of-state institutions here in Maryland, both in terms of distance ed and physically operating within our state boundaries. Each of these different types of proposals have their own checklists and criteria, but they all fit within the same framework of ensuring quality, alignment with state goals, and responsiveness to workforce needs. So let me stop there and see if you all had any questions on our process and priorities. And I do know I have certainly Secretary Rise on, but there are a couple of people from the program review team if anybody wants to add.
Emily, can you talk a little bit about Workforce Shortage Council? What is their purpose, and talk about the scholarship that's linked with those?
Absolutely. So so we have this other council to identify workforce shortages. That council is created not in the context of academic program review, but in the context of a specific scholarship. So we have a statewide scholarship that is tailored for industries and occupations that have been identified as a workforce shortage. The statute, back to our laws, identifies, I want to say, about 7 or 8 specific fields, things like early childhood, nursing, individuals who are going into law who will be serving the public in a variety of ways. So there's 7 or 8 existing categories identified by law. The advisory council is charged to confirm whether or not those are still shortages, and or if we need to add additional fields for eligibility for the scholarship. That council convened once or twice last academic year. Now that we have a director of workforce need, we will be convening that council more regularly, and ideally we'll be making recommendations to the commission by the end of the calendar year around either revising the list, maintaining the list of workforce shortage areas eligible for the scholarship. And make that recommendation by the end of the calendar year. I don't know if I said that out loud. Secretary Wright, did I cover all the points that you wanted me to cover?
No, that's wonderful. Do you remember how much is the scholarship budget?
I do not. We do have that statistic ready for today's presentation, but I don't have it off the top of my head.
That's fine.
And we also know it's a small scholarship. It is on the smaller end. I want to say it's only about 300 or 400 students are awarded the scholarship. The scholarship does range from $2,000 to $4,000. So if anybody can do the quick math on that, of about $4,000 times 350, I can't do the mental math on that. Secretary Rye, our mathematician.
It's over $1 million, I think, for sure. And I think it's also for President Williams and others, it's also applicable to non-credit students. So I think those are some benefits there. So.
Yeah.
So
that's this all ties together.
The list that gets created, which programs are eligible for those scholarships, I think is important to look at that list on a yearly basis, and with input from all stakeholders, we will be revising that list. So, it has not been revised for a while. So it's time to really look at it and revise it.
And that advisory council has a number of non-college or university representatives. So of course, Department of Commerce and Department of Labor have representatives, but there are a number of organizations that represent industry partners that are part of that discussion. Thank you, Dr. Phillips. Appropriation 1.2.
Right.
I'm sorry, I did not have that statistic off the top of my head. Any questions on our review process? If not, what I'd like to do is turn it over to Dr. Silva, who is our Associate Director for Program Review. She oversees the team that does the day-to-day work on all of these proposals and processes. She has some statistics that I think would help contextualize all the work that is happening within her team. So if there are no pending questions, oh, President Williams, go for it.
I'm sorry, I can't find my raise the hand at the moment. Quick question about the timing of the group that is establishing the workforce demand and so on and so forth with these proposals. And then once that is established, what will be their cycle, their cadence? Meaning, are we going to have lists that are good for period A from X to X, and then there'll be a new list? And what do we anticipate is going to be the cadence of that?
Absolutely. So we've got kind of two parallel conversations happening. One is just simply the appendices for the workforce needs analysis, which are the appendices to the state plan. Those are to be updated every year. Right now, the first version, which was approved in March, centers primarily on Department of Labor projections, occupational projections. That is, of course, one data source. And we are having lots of conversations with our sister agencies to consider additional data sources to inform those projections. The expectation is that that list is updated every year. We then have the Advisory Council on Workforce Shortage, designed specifically for the scholarship, but we're going to take advantage of their expertise and say, can you help us with our lists as well? And so they will be providing in unofficial capacity input on our workforce needs list, primarily as statutorily required for the purpose of the scholarship, but also for the purpose of our workforce needs analysis. They are expected to meet every 2 years to update the shortages for the purposes of the scholarship. But I think internally we have said, no, we're going to convene that group far more regularly. Not every 2 years by any means, but on a far more regular basis. Does that help answer your question, President Williams? Great. And as this information comes out, we recognize we do need to have a cadence in communicating with presidents and provosts and campus leadership. So we're thinking through how to communicate this information effectively so that you all know, okay, there's a new list or there's been some decisions that have been made. So it is our commitment to keep that information transparent so that you all have that information readily accessible and know when it's getting updated. Dr. Khan.
Good morning, Emily, and good morning, everyone. It's a truly beautiful fall day. Emily, I had a question for you. Since we serve as an advisory council, does the statute or does the MHEC view us to have an yearly report at the end of whatever the fiscal year it would be as an advisory council? I know I'm part of some advisory council where MHEC would like us to see that. So that's number one. And number two, I was curious if the commissioners, MHEC commissioners, had either a desire or a wish list of what this council should achieve beyond whatever we have spoken. Because I know we have heard from you and Dr. Rai, but I was wondering, is there a wish list or a guidance that the commissioners have for us?
Sure. So first, no expectation for an annual report. Quite frankly, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, still needs to be done to implement House Bill 1244. Two big heavy lifts at this point is these standards for unreasonable duplication and unnecessary duplication. And that will be the next thing that this council reviews, provides input on, is those regulatory standards. The second would be a process for fully online programs. House Bill 1244 directs us. So those are two big lifts for this council to review. Once we get through those, there may be other topics or issues around academic program review that this council would need to provide input on. So the expectation is any regulatory changes, any process changes around academic program review would come to this council. The purpose of this council is articulated in our bylaws, and I'll make sure that everybody has access to those bylaws. They're up on our website. And it articulates the purpose of this council and the commission's expectation as an advisory council to the commission. So I hope that answers your question. Do you have other questions, Dr. Khan, before I move on?
Yeah, I was wondering about the commissioners, but I want to go back to the first question. The legislation came about because someone in Annapolis wanted this stuff. And I'm wondering is if they don't get a report, will they feel abandoned that MHEC has abandoned the regulations? So the question is how does MHEC ensure that the good work is being done, and then there are no further more regulations or harsher regulations? With again, what the President Taos and Dr. Ginsburg said, with negative connotation on that, right? So the question is how do we ensure that those who regulated this legislation on us know that we are working on that if there's no annual report? Unless, Emily, you're doing it.
I think having open and longer communications with our elected officials in Annapolis, and letting them know. We get questions about how is the implementation of this bill going? How's the implementation of this bill going? And so we are being held accountable in possibly unofficial ways in the absence of a report. This is where it is important. We do articulate our updates and our progress to the commission. So for example, when we had the commission review the letter of intent process, that was one of the questions from the commissioners was, has the Program Review Process Advisory Council reviewed this? And we put that in our memo for adoption. So there are ways that we are putting it on public record that this council not only exists, but this council is providing input to the processes that the commission is endorsing and or adopting. So we might need an annual report in 2 to 3 years, but I think we have enough work that everyone is interested in knowing the progress that we're making that we get questions about it on regularly.
I think what is the highest priority is making sure that House Bill 1244 is implemented, and within that implementation process, the intent is to have this body shape that implementation. So, and there are different parts have different deadlines. Most important thing is to make sure we are not late on anything. So far, we have done everything on time. As Dr. Dow mentioned, unnecessary and unreasonable will be a tough thing that we need to go through. Good conversation, good discussions, and we heard some good things today. Implementation of those, I think, will be important. And there are other parts of the bill that we need to implement as well. And Dr. Power is next.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Emily, I think you answered part of my question, but I'm just trying to sort of figure out our path forward. So you mentioned you had new draft standards for unnecessary and unreasonable, and I presume that your thought from the MHEC side is that those will be run through this body and that we will ultimately work to develop regulations that will then be passed by both AELR and others. And I guess I'm sort of looking for the timeline on that. How do you see that playing out? Is this a 2-month, 6-month? Where are we? When will things be circulated? That sort of thing.
Absolutely. So I nodded my head. I know the recording doesn't necessarily record nodding. Yes to all of those questions. This advisory council would absolutely, you are our first stop in reviewing draft regulations. So I think what the plan is to present them to the commission first as just, here's a draft. We want to get their thoughts, and then permission to move it into this advisory council for input. And then we would have longer conversations based on what we've drafted. And then it would, if there are other groups like the Segmental Advisory Council or any other entities that we need to talk with, we could do that. And then ultimately take it back to the commission as initial drafts for AELR process.
So I'll just note that it seems like we're the second step there. So everything will go to the commission first and then come back to this body and then go back to the commission.
Correct. In case there are concerns that the commissioners wants us to address, we want to make sure we give them an opportunity first and foremost to either vocalize the concerns, vocalize explicit questions that they want us to focus on, or issues. So that is the purpose and it really is like draft. Conceptually, this is what we're thinking. Commissioners, before we move it to PRPAC, what are your thoughts? Great. President Wilson.
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
Hey, good morning. Emily and Secretary, once we get to the part where we are going to be discussing and ultimately reviewing a draft on necessary program duplication and unreasonable program duplication, I mean, there's a lot of fuss about those two terms as this bill was being crafted. And I just want to make sure or ask, will we as a council have access to counsel? Or is the legal aspects of this are going to take place someplace else? You know, because it's one thing for us as practitioners to kind of come to the table with a kind of a lay kind of view of these things, but these two terms are so rooted in legality that we would not want to spend a whole lot of time, for example, if legally these things mean something totally different.
Absolutely. Thank you, President Wilson. I do want to recognize I think the short answer is yes, most definitely. I do want to recognize Miss Ward, Kimberly Ward, who is on the call with us today and will be on the call with us for future meetings as well. She is MHEC's Assistant Attorney General, and so is very involved in the drafting and is obviously our AG. So, you know, she's hearing firsthand the discussions here. If we do need to get advice from her or get clarification, she will be attending these meetings. Ms. Ward, I see you came off mute. I don't know if you want to say anything.
No, I will be here, Dr. Wilson, and prepared to answer any questions and things of that nature. So yes, I will be here.
But I do want to appreciate the comment. These things are rooted in the legalities as well. And as a mathematician, I understood the difference between unnecessary, necessary, and not necessary. So all these things sometimes can mean different things. You know, so I think it's important whatever regulations we write, we have to make sure that they're consistent with the law and legalities of what has been proposed. So, you know, all recommendations are welcome, certainly. I mean, that's the point here. But I think AG's opinion will be important. And I know our AG Ward consults with the Attorney General's office on this matter also. So I think these things are heavily reviewed and from the legal point of view.
Great. Okay. Pending no additional questions, I'm going to turn the time over to Dr. Silva to quickly run us through some stats around recent program reviews. So Dr. Silva, take it away.
Thank you, Dr. Dow, and thank you, Advisory Council, for having me today to present this. I'm excited to share all of the things that our team does. As Dr. Dow mentioned, we not only process the new program and the substantial modifications, we process other proposals for changes to your programs that you all submit to MHEC, as well as some other applications that I'll get into. So first, I'd like to share some statistics. Before I pull up the slide, I just want to let you know kind of the time frame for this. This is our official MFR statistics that we submit to DBM each year. So this is our most recent submission and this is based on fiscal year reporting, not calendar year reporting, to make that clear. And this goes back from 2022 to 2025. I'd like to point out that in 2022, there was a change to the academic program review team. We took institution review out of that to focus a team more on the program review side. And with that, we went from 3 analysts processing program proposals to now we have a team of 10. So you'll see that in the report. We have been on the up and up, and we continue to process better. And I hope you all feel that at your institutions. So let me show you the data. Okay, so this first line, to be clear, is all of the program proposals that my team does for the institution. So that includes the non-substantial modifications, things like title changes, less than 50% curricular changes, modality. There's more simple proposals, as well as the new program, substantial modifications, and the circulated proposals. So you'll see this year in the fiscal year, we've done 62, and since 2022, we've processed a total of 2,189. For that processing time, in the 2025, we have reached that 99% of the time, processing those in 60 days. You'll see another statistics below, but in total processing for those, we do reach about a 99% in 60-day completion rate. Next line is the number of complete academic programs approved. And you'll see each year only maybe 1-3 proposals are not. All of those are out of objectionable items that those eventual denials came, to be clear. So in total, since 2022, we have approved 2,181 total actions that is submitted under this program review process. The next line is the number of program proposals that it received at least one objection each year. So we've processed a total of 22. That does not include objections that were withdrawn, that were only ones that were processed to completion. The next line, as I already discussed, is the number of full-time employees. So we've gotten that up to 10 as of 2025. We are fully staffed. It's kind of fluctuating, but we are fully staffed and happy about that. Next line, number of complete in-state academic program proposals subject to the 60-day deadline. So the non-substantials that you see on those cover sheets, the title changes, the modality changes that I mentioned, those are not in regulation subject to the 60-day deadline, but our team just sets a standard that we hope to process all within that 60-day time frame. Out of the 115 that we processed in 2025 over, again, that fiscal year, we reached that. It doesn't allow me in the MFR report. This is actually like 98.6, but to DBM, they don't let me put that 0.6. But so it's a little above 98% to brag. But we are doing that. I think it was 2 proposals that went over. One went over 65 days due to a holiday. We do process these in calendar days, to be clear, which includes the weekends and the holidays. So human error there, didn't adjust for that. But that is that report. I'll pause there before I go into my next slide if anybody has any questions on this data. Yes, President Ginsburg.
Yeah, Lindsay, you may be, if you're going to present this later, just say so. But I'm wondering if you have this data sorted by undergraduate or different categories of programs. I'm particularly interested, as you might imagine, in the graduate programs.
Emily, yes, I will let you take that.
Sure. So I think, well, sorry, Dr. Silva, to step on, but yes, we absolutely have that, and we can definitely split that out. What we can also share with you all is we do 6-month reports. Back to Dr. Khan's question about reporting. We do 6-month reports to our commission. So I can also give you the most recent 6-month report, which details all the programs, all the approvals, all the actions that the secretary has taken in that time frame. So we can certainly come back to you with some additional statistics broken out by undergrad, graduate, and maybe some other details that we think we think you might be interested in. But know that there are public record of program review reports that we send to the commission every 6 months.
Yeah, that would be great to see it in that frame. But I also want to say, as long as I have the floor for a second, how impressive this is and how much we appreciate the timely work that you all do. Certainly from our perspective at TU, that's been very, very helpful and very much appreciated. So the data affirms our experience. So thank you for that.
Oh, good. I'm so glad to hear that. And to Dr. Dow's point, that report, the biannual report that we submit, also breaks it down by segment. So you can see approvals. It really breaks it down. So we can circulate that after this meeting so you all can see that data. Any other questions? Okay, I'll move to my next slide. So in addition to the program review, our team processes other applications as well. So our team is responsible for processing the Academic Common Market, which is a tuition savings program for students in Maryland. We have reciprocity with certain other out-of-state institutions, mostly on the East Coast here, that allows students to go out of state and receive in-state tuition. That is based on program, that is not based on institution as a whole. So if the program isn't offered in Maryland, we might have reciprocity with another state, or a Maryland student, or another, like South Carolina student could come and take a program that they want to in Maryland and receive that in-state tuition benefit. So over the last 12 months, we've processed 194 applications for that program. We also handle the Unique Major Legislative Scholarship Program, which is an exception to the legislative scholarship in regulation for out of state. And that we processed in just 4 months, 485 applications. So that was a heavy lift for our team, and we're happy to have that wrapped up for this session. Then we also do the CC10 and Workforce Development Sequence Scholarships. That's for the non-credit programs for community colleges that get certain funding for those programs. And we're currently completing our allocation process. So I'll be able to report on that cycle shortly on totals that we process there. And finally, we did prison education programs as well. So this has been about 4 years that we've been reviewing those in conjunction with the new federal regulations, with Pell grants that went out, and the Department of Corrections here in Maryland that we work with in tandem. And so far over those years, we've processed and approved 13 total programs for the prison education. So that's a little bit more about what our team does in addition to processing the applications on a daily basis. That's all the data I have for you today, but does anybody have any questions? I'm happy to share any more data I have.
So Dr. Silva, thank you to you and Dr. Emily and your hardworking team. You can see the number of proposals received, and 98%. It's 98.6. I'll make it almost 99. If you're above 0.5, Dr. Khan will allow you to make it 97%, right? 99%. So I think that's what I say in my public speeches, but remarkable work is being done. I wanted you to see that the unique majors application where legislature allowed scholarships for students to go to out of state. It will be helpful to share in which programs students are going out of state, because we do not have programs in our state, right? So if we share with this group and encourage our own institutions to create academic programs in those areas, so we are not sending our students away and we are not sending our money away, right? So I think it will be important to share that. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
So Secretary Rye, I'm going to take that as an official request that we draft a memo to the Program Review Process Advisory Council, identifying programs that we either through the unique major or academic common market, programs that are offered in other states that we know students are interested in going to that are currently not offered here in Maryland. And so we can prepare that memo to this advisory council and possibly even to the segmental advisory council for distribution out to the campuses as another piece of information around to help us attract and keep Maryland students in Maryland. Dr. Khan.
Dr. Dow, you're aware that in another advisory council for the faculty, we were very concerned about the net migration of the higher ed students to other states for various reasons. Wisconsin was one that was always noted up there. I was wondering if you or Dr. Silva would consider having this information on a public-facing MHEC website, and not just a static, but I would say perhaps a 4 to 5 year. So we have so the institutions, the leadership, but also the faculty institutions know over the past 5 years what is the migration of the academic areas. Because it could very well be that this year it is one area, I'm not going to disclose it, but let's say this is one area, but that's just an anomaly. So I think it will be wise for all of us to know if there is a trend. I think that's the biggest thing, right? You don't want to come up with a program and invest all the resources for a 1 year static information. So I think it would be, if it's possible. Now, overall, 148 is a small number, but when you look at the money, that's a huge number. With the state grappling for funds, but that would be my big ask. If there's a way that we could have it as a public-facing information, in addition to the leadership here that has that information too.
Absolutely, yeah, we can make sure that that memo has both historical trend data and that it is posted to our website for public accessibility.
And when the data comes out, you will see there are certain programs that will pop up.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Dr. Dow, I remember you sharing with us one time a very cool feature of your data gathering through the MHEC website, where you could just toggle down and you could search in there. Is that something that this could be tapped into? I forget what do you remember? It was like about a year or 2 years ago. You shared that with us.
It's I think what you might be asking about is our academic program inventory, which is an inventory of all the academic programs offered in Maryland. The limitation is it does not include the non-credit programs. And we're working to figure out how we can include non-credit programs, but it certainly includes all the credit-bearing certificates and degrees. We definitely have a handful of dashboards that, more than a handful, we have several dashboards that do break out student outcomes in lots of different ways, in particular academic programs. And then, and we can maybe do this at a future meeting, MLDS, the Maryland Longitudinal Data System Center, just released a very impressive dashboard, which I'm admittedly still wrapping my head around, but it tracks students from their academic programs through into wage data, industry outcomes, all sorts of really helpful information to see how our students are progressing into the Maryland economy. I would not be able to do it justice by giving it a presentation, so we can talk with our MLDS liaison to see if she can come and do a presentation for you all.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that recommendation. President Wilson, I think you might be the last one to go.
Yeah, just a quick question. I think the identification of out-migration where other states are offering programs that we don't is a terrific idea. I guess my question is it possible that beyond just identifying the programs, you get a sense of how many students are going out of state to those programs? Because we would not want to all of a sudden proliferate our campuses, all these programs, if, for example, we only have 5 students going out of state for this one and 10 going out of state for that one. So is that at all possible?
I think to some extent, yes. The challenge is the agency does not have access to things like the National Student Clearinghouse data, but we do have sister agencies, so we can work with what our agency has immediate access to, and then brainstorm how we can expand that to drill down a little bit deeper into number of students and what that looks like and some trends. So we can keep that on as a running item for us to explore, but we can certainly in the next 5 to 8 weeks produce a first level memo with some of that data.
And some of these programs, Dr. Wilson, are not too different than the existing programs. It also requires a little bit of adjustment and title and things like that. So I see there is some opportunity here for us to keep our students here.
Okay, one last update before we close our meeting today. Thank you for the very fruitful discussion. Our next meeting, based on people's availability, we will keep it the same date and move it to 9 a.m. So that would be September, oh, please forgive me, I'm so sorry, I do not have this ready. September 15th at 9 a.m. I'll send a calendar invite as soon as this meeting adjourns. Pending no other business, we will close out. As soon as we know more about where we are with some of our regulations, I'll circulate an agenda for our September 15th meeting, and we'll go from there. In the meantime, I do want to challenge everyone. Unreasonable duplication and unnecessary duplication. How do we operationalize? We have ideas, and we'll present you with those ideas. But think on that over the next month. Unreasonable duplication and unnecessary duplication. What are the standards? How do we make the distinction? What is harm to the state? What is harm to students? What would be in violation of state or federal laws? I know that's a legal question, but based on your knowledge and understanding, come with those thoughts. I'm ready for discussion. Oh,
Okay,
President Wilson.
Just quick, are we also in this discussion going to look at how many such programs, be they unreasonable or unnecessarily being duplicated, would come at great cost to the state? So in essence, we're going through a period, where higher education funding is being retrenched. And so how do we not have this conversation without the state saying, but look, we just don't have the kind of resources where we can fund 50 different programs, right? But 50 programs of the same caliber.
Noted, President Wilson. I think you're gonna kick off our next discussion with that thought.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, everyone. See you on the 15th. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.